I want to talk a little bit about the subject, and really more importantly, I want to provide time to chat with all of you and understand what questions you might have while we're here together today. A little bit about my background. Anita introduced me as the CEO of Desert Angels. I am an angel investor. I spent about 20 years in commercialization and startup support, so helping other companies raise funds. But I am also a founder, and I've gone through the process myself of raising money, both from friends and family, from high net worth individuals, from corporate venture funds, and from taking a company public. So I have a lot of old wounds and bruises, which slowly heal over the years. And what I wish I had was someone to tell me what not to do. So hopefully today we can spend a little bit of time talking about that. Are my slides advancing? Just to make sure, Anita. Yep. All right. So 5 things we're going to talk about in the next 20 minutes. Investment readiness, how to create a plan, how to make the most of 8 seconds. And you'll see why that's important. Where to actually go and find investors. So we'll talk about trailheads. You know, the trailhead it's the place where you go before you start the hike. And trailheads may not be the answer, but they may tell you where to take the next step. And then I'll talk a little bit about Desert Angels, and then we'll open it up to questions. So starting first with investor readiness, think about this kind of as a checklist. And I know most of you have gone through this already with Anita and her team, but so you have the right folks on your team, you've got your financial forecasts together, you have a capital strategy that makes sense, and you are ready to start looking for external funding. So how do you take the next step, and how do you identify investors that are a right fit for you? And then how do you develop the relationship with those investors? So thinking about your first approach, I'm very methodical, and I like to create a plan. And this is one of the things I wish someone would have told me to do when I went out to raise funds myself. But it's really important to get organized. So many of you know this already because you're on the fundraising path yourself. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time. And it's really helpful to have a game plan in place, think about how much time it may take to raise funds, and get help along the way. And this is where your advisors, you may have industry advisors on your team already, where they can help you kind of assess the feedback you get and what steps you should take next in your investing activities. It is also super helpful to put together diligence materials. And I'm going to come back to this, but you know, the more you can do upstream before you come to us as investors, and the more prepared you are, the smoother the process is going to take, and the less time that it'll take as well. It's also helpful to create a whole system so that you can track who you talk to, when, and what follow-up actions are needed. Because here's a secret, I'm remembering that, I'm tracking that. So if a company comes and pitches to us and we say, not yet, come back and give us some updates, here's some things to work on. The next time you come and approach us, I'm going to go back and look at my notes. So good idea for you to do the same thing. Also really important to understand what kind of feedback you get from different presentations, because you may want to tweak your presentation for the audience, especially if you're a deep pharma company and you're talking to scientific advisors and investors in a very sophisticated venture fund, and they want to know a lot about that particular molecule. You'll want to adjust your pitch accordingly. And then the most important thing I can say is you'll want to communicate. And I will also come back to that too. So thinking about, you know, kind of the approach and how to lay this out and get organized, I started hunting around online, and you know, I actually heard Anita Bell's voice in my head about the lean startup. And I'm thinking, why not take a similar approach to building investor relationships? And when I was looking at the 4 steps to the epiphany, this is kind of the book that started the lean startup revolution by Steve Blank. You know, he basically said 4 things to really shift from a product focus to a customer focus in your business. And if I'm assuming, Anita, that you've been talking with the companies at UACI about this. But, it's really important. Who are your customers? How do you, understand their level of interest and so on? You should be familiar with this already, so I won't spend any time going through it. But think about that now in terms of your investor approach. So what you really want to do is figure out, all right, how do I move forward and identify the right kind of investors? How do I validate? It's using the same 4 words: discover, validate, create, and build. How do I validate that I'm sharing the right pitch to the right investor at the right time? How do I create interest both for my funding needs today and in the future? And how do I build relationships? And I would say go back and just take a look at the Steve Blank model. Look at the pictures if you don't have time to read it. I'm a picture guy. And, you'll just see 4 circles: discover, validate, create, and build. And that's exactly what you want to do with your investor strategy. That'll help you stay focused so you're not spinning your wheels or wasting your time. We know that you've already got quite a bit on your plate. As it is, you're building a company and changing the world. So, we want to make sure that you have all the time and bandwidth to do that. The second part of this, and it ties to the discovery element, is look at the landscape and figure out where you are and what kind of funding is right for your venture. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today because the goal of today is really about building those relationships, finding investors and building those relationships. But consider that not all dollars are the same, and they may cost different. They may have different expectations. You may be at different stages of your funding continuum as you're going forward with the company. Some of the most obvious types of dollars you'll see on this slide. So for example, you may be looking at your team, at your rich Uncle Frank for cash in the company. You may be thinking about crowdfunding, and I'm not talking a lot about that in this presentation, but I'm happy to chat more about that during Q&A. You may be working with high net worth individuals, so you might have medical doctors in the community that are interested in the tool that you have or the device that you have. You may be going to angel groups such as Desert Angels. There are a few around the state, and I will talk about those in a minute. Or of course, you might also be going directly to venture capital. And I'm sure you know the difference between angel investing and venture capital investing, and I'll talk a lot more about what Desert Angels does at the end of this, but angel investors are investing their own money and venture investors are not. So the expectation, engagement, the ability to leverage resources will be quite different. Often venture funds don't like to invest at the bench, so they don't like to get really involved really early. There are exceptions to that. For example, in our community, UAVC, that's Fletcher's fund. He likes to invest at the very early stage, but not all venture funds do. And so as you're looking at the different kinds of funds available, and I do have some trailheads to share, you'll get some ideas about, what might be a right fit. Here's the bad news. Oh, and I see that it's not working on my slide, but you may remember Men in Black. And Men in Black 2, there's a scene where they're in the post office and they go behind the wall and they open up the copier door, and there's an alien inside the copier and he's processing mail really quickly. Well, that's my day every day. That's what my life is like every day. Not saying I'm an alien, but I have to move those pieces of mail around really quickly. And unfortunately, it's like that for most investors. So much so that one of the pioneers in angel investing, John Houston, he's a great guy. He's come up with a bunch of really funny quotes about angel investing, but one of them is my favorite, and that is, if you like life distilled down and sped up, you'll love angel investing. And that's what it's like for me. And I'm saying this because I want you to get into my head for a minute so that you understand what kind of relationship you're building if you're approaching angel investors. We just don't have a lot of time. We have a lot of love, but we don't have a lot of time to spend it. So here's some bad news, more bad news. Microsoft published a study recently about attention span. And this is really important because in 2022, the average attention span for a person in the US, an adult, is 8 seconds. So it's 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4. Okay, so I've already lost you. So it goes really, really quickly. And they also compared that to the attention span of a goldfish, which is 9 seconds. I thought that's pretty bad. So you don't have a whole lot of time to make a good impression. And I know you know that already. 8 seconds feels like a lot of pressure. But there is some not so bad news. Psychology Today looked at the study and they kind of debunked it and said, you know, it's actually really about how much time people spend looking at websites, not really about attention span, but they agree it's a problem. And they said ways that you can catch attention if you are teaching or you're presenting or telling a story or maybe presenting to investors is you could either focus on ancient themes like identity or revenge, which I wouldn't necessarily suggest, or you can mix things up and just keep it short, keep it under 10 minutes, ideally. So you have a lot of control in how you can approach investors and begin to build those relationships. But before you even get to the pitch, there are a lot of things you can do to maximize your 8 seconds of attention. It all begins first with understanding the fit, and I want to spend a little bit more time on that. But thinking about those 4 things from Steve Blank, you know, you're going to target the right investors, you're going to look for their reaction, and you're going to tweak your slides a little bit. You're going to look to build relationships and drive those relationships going forward. Think about me as the alien and the copier. I don't have a lot of time to chase you. So I need you to chase me. I need you to drive our relationship and follow up with me. And for me in particular, as a lead of an angel group of 100 people just like me, I really need your help driving this relationship forward. And it really takes a lot more to say a lot less, but it's helpful if you can be distilled. You know, I'd love to go out and have a drink with you and learn about everything else. But, you know, when we think about raising money, it's helpful to get, you know, straight to the point and to be really succinct in what you need. It's also helpful to have a champion in the group. And we can talk about ways to make that happen during our Q&A session. And then, of course, as you know, it is about you and your personality. And we invest first and foremost in the team. And so don't be weird, but be yourself, if that makes sense. Because, you know, we want to get to know you. We're investing in you. And chances are half of the deals we do are follow-on funding rounds. So chances are we're going to invest in you again, especially if we believe in what you're doing. So digging in for a minute and talking about the fit, you know, I kind of distill this down to 6 things. And it starts first with understanding the fit. So not all investors invest in your business, and that's okay. You need to understand, you know, who is, and there are a lot of ways that you can figure that out. But, you know, you'll know what industry you're in, what kind of product you have, and then you're going to look for investors that are investing in your space. You're also, if you have time and energy, you know, to your advantage, look at their portfolio of companies and look for companies that are not competitive but complementary, because chances are they'll have additional expertise and industry connections that can be really helpful. They'll also appreciate that you've done your homework and you can see the fit of your company in their portfolio. It's also important to look at, you know, the kind of deal structure that they use. Typically what they look for, are they seed, pre-seed, early stage, Series A, Series B? You know, what are the typical deals they do? Are they investing $250,000 or $25 million? You know, does that align with where you are and where they are? Knowing all of this information ahead of time before you even get to a pitch is really valuable. It empowers you and gives you a better position to negotiate and gives you a better chance as you're approaching the investor to make your pitch. You may also need other resources, so it's helpful to know, like, what's the demographic of the angel group? What's the background of the fund manager? You know, kind of take a look and do your own diligence on the folks that you're approaching, just again to make sure that you have a good fit. I know I'm covering a lot of stuff in a short period of time. After the pitch, there are also ways that you can maximize that 8 seconds that you had. You know, it's important to remain, and it goes without saying, but it is important to remain interested, be professional, and balance focus versus the desire to iterate. So I'm an engineer and I like to tinker, and so I will constantly tinker my slides until, you know, the cows come home. And you need to stick to your guns, stay focused, and, you know, make sure that the presentation aligns with your value and your company direction, you know, as you go forward. It's also helpful to understand the difference between no and not yet, because they are not the same answer. I will tell you no if it's not a right fit or it's not going to go forward, or I will tell you not yet if you're not ready or there are questions or issues that need to be worked out, or we want you to come back with updates later. And that happens a lot. We have a lot of companies that come and present to Desert Angels that just for whatever reason either weren't ready or there were some outstanding issues or things that just weren't really clear. They went away, you know, made some progress, addressed whatever the issues were or questions, came back, pitched again, and got funding. So that does happen, not just with us, but with a lot of angel groups. And then, of course, create a newsletter, send updates. Companies that send me regular updates are more likely to get follow-on funding, other kinds of resources and support. Okay, last part of this is really about the trailhead. That's how to find investors. And I'm hoping that you're all starting with the UA Center for Innovation because it's a great resource. So I put them in the center. You may know this, but in the science of cartography, that countries put themselves in the center and then they build all the other countries around them on the map. So for the purpose of this, I put UACI in the center. First things first is to know your fit, understand where you are in the market, in the industry. Look at other comps, look at other companies that are raising money, how much they've raised, what their valuations are, if they've had exits. And two good resources for that besides UACI are PitchBook and CB Insights. There are a lot of other really great resources that might be relevant for your industry. The second is know the language and the tools. If you're planning to raise outside equity, a really great resource is Seraph. Seraph has a due diligence checklist, and I would suggest take a look at that. Get your ducks in a row before you decide to go out and pitch for funding, because that's going to help you ask a lot of questions you may not have thought of. It'll help you with version control, which is a big problem I had in tracking what you have, and it'll help get your team on the same page, which is hugely important. That's happened to me, and it happens to us. We've seen it. There was a program on TV, the Billionaire, where one team member pitched and the other team member watched. And as the billionaire was asking questions of the team member who was pitching, the person who was pitching didn't get all the answers right. And the person who was watching, so as a viewer, you could see both, was saying, oh, that's not the right valuation. Oh, that's not the right amount. So make sure that your team is on the same page. And tools like Seraph can be really helpful and valuable to do that. Seraph is also good because they have ongoing newsletters and updates on a variety of topics if you're looking for early stage funding. It's also important to prepare your materials and to identify, I mentioned this already, of course, who you want to go after. So in terms of the targets, the Angel Capital Association, which we're a charter member of. It's our professional trade association for angel groups in the US. There are probably 700 to 1,000 angel groups now. And ACA provides education and best practices, and it's a membership organization for those groups. If you go to ACA, just Google Angel Capital Association directory, you'll find a list of every angel group that's a member. And that'll help you sort by region, by state, by type. It's a really valuable tool, and it provides all of the links for those angel groups. Another good resource is the Angel Resource Institute. They publish an annual report that ranks angel groups by region, and it shows typical deal size for seed, Series A, how much is raised, the valuation, and so forth. That's a really good ballpark to look at to get a better sense of where you might fit or how angel groups might react to your ask if you're approaching angel groups, as an example. We are also a target, Desert Angels, and we sit on the national stage, so we have the ability to carry you forward and syndicate the deal to other angel groups. And in terms of preparing materials, we use Dealum as our online platform, and I think now it's a new platform, I think now that has about 70 or 80 angel groups on board. They're new, but they've been around for 5 years. You may also see Gust or Ask for Funding or a bunch of other online platforms. All of them serve a purpose, which is to help you think about how you put all your materials together, and they will help you connect with angel groups. We like Dealum because it allows you to create your own deal room. You own it, not us. You share it with us, you share it with other angel groups. We can use that to syndicate, and it's a great foundation for diligence. So it asks a lot of questions, but all of your answers get archived and become foundational answers to the next stage of questions for diligence. And then, of course, if you're thinking about venture funding, two really great resources are the National Venture Capital Association. So they do list activity by region and by industry. They do some specialty reports now. They have a specialty life science report. And PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC. They used to do something called the PwC Money Tree, but now they produce other kinds of reports based on National Venture Capital Association data. So both of these are really great resources to see what's happening in the venture capital space. There are a lot of venture capital activities, new VC activities happening here in Arizona. And if you're planning to go to 10 West, then I'm sure you'll hear about quite a bit of that next week. I would also suggest look at industry leaders and at exit targets, because companies that might acquire you, your exit targets, and by the way, you want to consider them the same way you consider investors or customers in taking this methodical approach, but they may have investment arms. Some large companies may have investment arms that are always looking to invest in companies in your space. And so it's a really good idea to have a good handle on all of that. And I included the logo on here for the Angel Syndication Network. Shameless plug, we are a member, I'm the co-chair, and the Angel Syndication Network is now about 70 angel groups in the Southwest region and represents over $1 billion with a B of direct investment. And so if we have a company with Desert Angels that we've invested in, we have the opportunity to present them on the national stage through ASN, and there are a few other syndication groups like that now that provides a pretty broad access for our companies. In the remaining 1 minute, I'll give you a brief overview of Desert Angels. We are your local angel investing group. We have over 100 members. These are active accredited investors, so they are expected to make regular investments. And we say that because we want to make sure that everybody at the meeting is active, engaged, and has the right motivation for connection. In 2021, the ARI Halo report, based on the 2021 data, ranked us #1 in the Southwest region. That's out of 5 states. not including California. And number 4 in the country is most active angel group based on number of deals. So, I mean, I get 1,500 applications a year. And our mission is, you can see there, is really all about generating returns. And we come at it from an ROI approach because we want to make our members successful. We want to make the company successful. We want to see the region succeed. Although sometimes I appreciate that comes across as we're just thinking about numbers. And that's not entirely the case, because we do care about economic development and growth here in Southern Arizona. In about 11 years, we've actually invested now almost $60 million. So these numbers are out of date, into well over 100 companies and 12 sidecar funds. About half of our deals now are life science. We also deal a lot with hardware, materials, energy, software as a service. The advantage of working with a group like Desert Angels, we are an active network of angel investors, which I mentioned. They did some studies about diversity of thought that leads to better outcomes, because we're bringing different perspectives and asking different kinds of questions. We bring different levels of experience and expertise. We're a member engaged membership organization. So, you know, members bring a lot of different values to the conversation, and we really value that. And I talked a little bit about our ability to syndicate, and the time from application to funding depends largely on you, and also on the complexity of the deal and the interest of our members. And we've seen this happen anywhere from 30 days to 3 years, and anywhere from $5,000 to over $1 million. A typical first investment might be $250K. But about half of what we do is follow-on funding. So we have several companies in our portfolio that have received a significantly greater amount of money from us. Our members invest in companies directly through a special purpose vehicle that's an LLC that's set up to invest in the company. So they may either do it directly or they may do it through an SPV. We also have a sidecar that will automatically co-invest when certain criteria are met. And just from a numbers perspective, we get over 1,500 applications a year. We're a super busy group. Sadly, most of that comes from outside of Arizona. So I'm challenging Anita and her team to change that. But we get maybe 65 companies a year that come to our screening panel meetings, about 20 that come to our dinner meetings. And then of those 20, about 10 will get funded. So if you make it all the way through the process to a dinner meeting, you have a pretty good chance of getting some funding moving forward. It's about half. And on average per year, our members will invest between 4 million and 6 million in about 20 deals. And I say 20 deals because roughly half of those are new, as you can see from the numbers in the line above it, and half of those are going to be follow-on funding rounds. And just as a word about what angel investors are, we are high net worth individuals. An angel group is a group of angel investors. SEC has clear guidelines about definitions for angel investors. Angel investors account for almost all of outside equity for startup companies. 90% come from angel investors. And angel investors invest about $25 billion a year into startup companies in the US. And angel investors get engaged because of that return on investment. It's an asset class for some of us. You know, we might take 10% of our assets and invest those in tech startup companies or life science startup companies. For other members, it's about economic development, engagement, or other personal motivators. And you can see a list of companies at the bottom of the screen that all got funding from angel investors when they first started. So just to recap, you know, we talked about what it means to be ready, how to create a plan, be methodical, put together a list, form a team, engage your advisors, you know, really create a plan for how you want to approach investors, track everything, make sure you know what you say and what you're offering so that you can go back and adjust it if you need to. Make the most of your 8 seconds by ensuring that you have a right fit for those investors. And then, you know, I provided a couple of trailheads, but Anita will surely have many, many more for you to consider as you're looking for those investors to connect to. And of course, consider us as well as a potential investment resource if you're looking for angel investing.